this morning. This great morning. We're finishing this series on the divine intangibles. And the intangible in the idea that we really experience God sometimes through the inward to our heart, inward to this beautiful place of the presence of God, that we get that true, tangible love, a love that passes all understanding, the peace that passes all understanding. And my lesson today is called the Tower of Babel, after obviously the story of the Tower of Babel, and it comes from Genesis 11. Now the whole earth had one language and few words. And as men migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with a top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. This is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. So come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they might not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all of the earth. So this is one of those stories that is very interesting, and we all know I think the greatest confusion of all is communication. Communication between couples, communication with people. What you think you're communicating and what you are communicating are often two thoroughly different things. But when you think of English and try and learn English, it is very confusing. For instance, there is no egg and eggplant. We know that, right? There's no egg and eggplant. There's no ham and a hamburger. There's no apple or pine and what? A pineapple. And yet, those are the words. So we take the English language for granted on so many levels. The paradox is that we find then quicksand works what? Slowly. Boxing rings are square. Guinea pigs are not from the place of Guinea, or are they pigs? And in the English language, it's kind of interesting. When writers write, but fingers don't fing, grocers don't gross, and hamburgers don't ham. And the plural of tooth is teeth, and the plural of both is not beasts, and the plural of goose is not geese. Geese. One goose, two geese. Oh, one goose, two geese. So moose is not meat. And if vegetarians eat vegetables, what do humanitarians eat?
Human.
And in what language? In English, we both recite a play, but a play is also a recital, or we ship things by truck, and then we send cargo by ships. I'm already a bit confused just by all of this. In English, we have noses that run and feet that smell, and we park in driveways and drive on parkways. So no wonder we get a little confused in life. And that's what they say, that in all the beginning of Genesis, the first 11, 14 chapters are all parables, or in the Jewish tradition, it's called midrash, rashes. And so what you see here is the picture of a depiction, anyway, of the Tower of Babel. Of course, it's not the real Tower of Babel, because the Tower of Babel doesn't exist in its present in the way that it's written. These were huge structures, and these structures, these ziggarts, Z-I-G-G-A-R-T, show up in many different civilizations, and some of them we even see in Mexico City. You can see some of the way that some of them are built. They're built almost like a wedding cake with layers on them like this. But the interesting thing, the one that they say that was the Babel Tower of Babel, was 153 feet high. So in putting that in context, the Washington Monument is 555 feet, 5.212 inches. So 550, 153, that, just imagine how tall that is when you think of how tall the Washington Monument is. But even more amazing was the idea that underneath, if you will call it the basement, although that's not what they call it, the basement or the underneath was as large as a football stadium. Wow. Football field. So imagine what it took, not only the planning, but the doing of this. Just the very aspect of it. And I think that is truly amazing. But we know that in Psalms 127:1 it says, unless the Lord builds this house, those who build it labor in vain. And there is no Tower of Babel today. So we don't know if they built it in vain or if they built it in the spirit of something greater, but from the way it says it, it's very different. Now, the movie, most of you know, Jurassic Park, the scientists get together and they take DNA from dinosaurs, and they create this whole park of things that have died and things that don't exist on the world, in the earth anymore. But the thing that was very interesting about this particular movie was having to do with this lesson today, is Jeff Goldblum, who's one of the actors who plays in it, he asks this very important question. He says, you can do this. You've proven you can do this. The question is, could you do this? Should you do this? You could do it, but should you do it? Now that's a big question that sometimes in life we just don't take enough time. Something I talk about quite a bit. Taking time and allow the wisdom of God to work through us. Even because we could do something, should we do something, is a very important question to ask. So another question we might ask is, so what's wrong with building wonderful big buildings? What's wrong with that? God tells us in Matthew 5:38, be therefore perfect as God is perfect. So why not create? We were created to be creators. So I think the main thing that we have to think about today is not the idea of creating, because we were created to be creators. We've created since humanity probably first evolved enough to be able to have ideas and plans to make something. So there's really nothing wrong with making something, but the deeper question is to continue to ask, could or should we? And what is the purpose and reason for what we're doing? It's clear in today's life that to make our name for ourselves, we can do a lot of things. But I'm not always sure that doing certain things are the best and wisest choices. We don't have to watch very much television and political ads to see that both sides, both Republicans and Democrats, are using some really far out stuff to put their ads out there, to get their point across. They can do this, but should they do this? And what is the highest and best for our nation as a whole? Now, we also know that very rich people love to put their names all over buildings, right? Yeah. Dictators, kings, very, very rich people love to put their names all over things. And it's like they feel maybe better or superior than other people because their name is on it. And so, in their own way, maybe they're trying to say, you're fired because you're just not quite live up to, because I got a name on my building. Or what's interesting, if you've ever been into not a coliseum, but a stadium, and you remember it like at a particular name of a stadium, like the Cowboy Stadium is what I always think of the Cowboys. I don't know if that was actually the name of it when it first was built. But let's say you had a wonderful event in your life that was deeply meaningful to you, and you keep remembering it as the Cowboy Stadium. I'm a Texan from Dallas, the Cowboy Stadium. And then it becomes the Staples Center. Or then it becomes Office Depot Center. And it begins to be a little confusing, and we forget what it's all about and what it's really meant to be. So this whole thing of power and putting our name and exerting our power begins from a very young age. How many of you have ever seen a young kid, a toddler, just barely able to walk, go over and grab a toy out of another toddler's hand? Because why? They're bigger and they can. And they do it. So it begins, there's something innate in us to have it our way. Have it our way. We've heard that, right? You've heard that very advertisement from a hamburger company. What? Have it your way. And actually that's really what many advertisements try and do, is to say, have it your way. And if we get down to it, don't we most of the time want it, what? Our way? And as opposed to just saying, could I or should I? So it's clear that in many ways that people will do many things to make money. They will go to very strange and weird lengths to make a name for themselves, and or to sell themselves short, if you will. And again, like I said, we see this sadly in the political arena so much today. Whereas if people would just stay on message and we would even know what the message is, as opposed to just totally against other things, it's kind of scary when you really think about it in some levels. So maybe some of you had fathers, or mothers for that matter, who were not present in your lives because they were busy building careers. There's the man who gives 12 hours a day of his life to his job, whether it's flying here or there, or he's totally distracted by his job when he is home and he's not very present, especially the way technology is. Or I can't tell you the number of ministers I know who just give their whole life to the church, if they're not maybe a rabbi, to the synagogue, and their spiritual life first is the first thing that is lost, but also their love life and their life in general, the life of taking time to be quiet, the time to study, the time alone with their beloved. And so much is lost in that way. Or a salesperson who says, well, I'm only gonna do this once. I'm only going to be sneaky once. I'm only going to kind of tell the story once. I'm going to sell this house and not tell them about the fact that it's got a leak in the roof, or I'm going to do certain things just so that I can make the commission for that day. I'm not going to do it any other time. No, never again. We've all felt this way, haven't we? I can get away with it just once telling a story. I can just do it once and then only to do it again, and sometimes again and again. So easy to blame the world or blame situations and circumstances. A very prominent preacher and an executive from Johnson & Johnson Company were walking together, and the executive from Johnson & Johnson, the great soap company, said, I'm sorry, I just don't get it in this world. We've been practicing religion and talking about religion and about love and peace and all of these things for so many years. And you look at how crazy this world is. I mean, people are so mean and evil. It's amazing. And so the preacher just kept walking and didn't say a word and just thought about what he was saying. And so they kept walking and were talking about different things. And as they did, they came across a little boy who was playing in the streets, whose hair was all spiked out, and he was filthy dirty from running around and being just a kid and enjoying himself. And the preacher said, doesn't your company make soap? And the guy said, yeah, it does make soap. He said, my goodness, that soap has been around for a long, long time. And look at this kid over here, filthy dirty. And the executive from Johnson & Johnson said, well, yeah, but you got to use it to make a difference. And the preacher said, exactly. We forget that we need to use our lives, use our words, use our activity, live from the greatest part of ourselves on every day and everything we do, to ask, could we? Yes. But what should we is the real question. I think probably one of the greatest changes, let's not even consider technology, but the greatest change in our lifetime was the splitting of the atom, which created the atom bomb. And the man who created the atom bomb, he was a physicist, and his name was Richard Feynman. And he tells the story that anybody who's ever seen him interviewed, he's really always contemplated, did he do the right thing? Was it a good thing to do or not a good thing to do? And he says that after this particular, after the splitting of the bomb, he was taken into a Buddhist temple. And the Buddhist priest at that point said to him,